Hi, Jess. Hello.
Hey, Jenny. Did you do anything for Labor Day weekend?
Not really. I sort of got my life together for Labor Day weekend. I visited my grandmother. I I did a lot of I did a closet clean out. Okay, I guess in some people's eyes, I had an eventful Labor Day weekend. I created a spreadsheet of all my clothes. Did like a clothes audit.
Oh, so you can
Um,
make like a Clueless
Cost per
style
wear.
app.
Oh,
We went two
yep.
different ways. Like,
So
when
I
you're
had
like, oh, what am I going to wear? And you're like, a top from here, a bottom from here. Like, you could put pictures with all your clothes and like figure out your outfits.
yes, I'm not that intense yet. The pictures part seemed like one too many steps. But I did think there are a lot of one, I want to figure out which things I want to donate. And two, I want to see how much what my most expensive piece of clothing was and then sort of cost per wear, like what do I need to wear more often. And then I can sort of start making outfits a little bit like, oh, I need to wear this red shirt that I never wear. Like, can I style it in a way that I like? Which I don't really have any reason to do right now because I work from home and Zoom with you from home and don't go anywhere. But maybe in the next year, I'll start going more places. So anyway, I started doing all of that, which took like a half a day. And I did that while I was watching some TV. So that was good. And
Nice. What TV?
Started. House of Dragon, which is apt for this podcast. I also watched not all of, I still have 2 episodes to go of Nathan Fielder's newest show, The Rehearsal, which I don't know if you've seen Nathan For You. Have you seen it yet?
No, and I haven't seen The Rehearsal yet, but everybody keeps telling me to.
It's, yeah. I honestly, how much do you like unscripted shows or
They're fine, but I've heard that it's like that you get secondhand awkwardness from it, and I don't like that.
You do somehow. So you know how Carter can't watch The Office because of secondhand embarrassment situation. He watched the rest of The Rehearsal without me. So it is secondhand embarrassment, but I feel like the mechanism, I don't want to give too much away, but the mechanisms that Nathan uses and sort of just like the whole how elaborate everything is set up maybe supersedes and sort of like trumps the secondhand embarrassment that you can sort of get. But the concept is really good of being sort of socially awkward and wanting to rehearse things before doing them. And so Nathan Fielder takes it to the next level, like creating full sets that look like the original. Like if the setting is a bar, like they want to have some conversation in a bar, he like recreates the entire bar in a studio and hires actors and has the person rehearse what they're going to say and like hires an actor to look like whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I feel like I've seen a lot of tweets about it being like torturous or like making fun of how like, I don't know, like cringy or not cringy, but like social experiment in like a negative way. It's like the vibe I was getting from the tweets.
I can't tell. That's one of the reasons that I've kept watching is that I can't tell currently how I feel about it. I feel like I need to get to the final episode because things keep escalating. It's not like every episode is a contained one person's rehearsal. There are some things that span across a couple of episodes. Some people's rehearsals that take, I guess, a long time. But yeah, so I can't tell yet if I will be in the end be like, oh wow, this was a really great sort of look into human nature and also like a really elaborate sort of comedic joke, or if I will feel like this all worth it? You just made people feel a little uncomfortable. The one saving grace, I mean, not one saving grace, but you've got to imagine that all these people signed off on having their footage aired. So
yeah, like, you think after they did, or you think beforehand they like signed something that was like, yeah, I like give you the right to put this on TV, and then they do it, and then because that's like a reality show, like you sign up for it, but like
right,
you don't sign off on like the final edit.
True, the people who are the how do I put, like, who are the people rehearsing? Like the subjects, I guess, I'm sure gave their consent ahead of time. But then everyone else that's involved, like everyone in their actual life who doesn't know that they're rehearsing for a thing, I'm sure they had to give consent afterwards.
So I at least know that's how it worked.
sometimes I pull myself out because I'm like sucked into whatever's happening on screen. And then I'll like pull myself back and remind myself, people gave consent for this to air. It's not like they just like secretly shot with lipstick cameras and then just aired all these things. Like, yes, it may feel a little uncomfortable, but they all said it was okay. So maybe it'll all be okay in the end. We'll see.
I don't know why that reminded me of this. Do you remember in like 5th grade? And they came to my elementary school. So maybe you didn't know about this at the time. I feel like it was like, maybe they also came to one of the other elementary schools, but anyways, one of those prank shows came and they like pranked one of the 5th grade classes.
Oh, no.
It was like a hidden camera style thing. And I can't remember what the prank was, but they like had, I think the teacher wasn't on it. And maybe it was like a pop quiz or something. And I don't know why this was like an interesting TV show for everybody to watch, like 5th graders being pranked. It was on like Nick or something. You don't remember hearing about that? Yeah, I think it's because they came to 2 of our elementary schools.
I vaguely remember hearing about it, but it's like, as you said it, it just sparked like a sort of like, oh, maybe that sounds familiar, but what did they do?
I was so jealous because they didn't come into my class and I can't remember now. It was just one of the other 5th grade classes.
It wasn't Punk'd. What the prank Ashton was. Kutcher was not.
No, it wasn't Punk. Okay. It was like the kids' version of Punk. Like, who was watching this?
It's Bob Punk.
I guess kids were watching it. I don't know.
No, that's what I call Punk.
I feel like at the time, maybe I recognized the name of the show, but I don't think I had watched it.
Interesting.
Very odd. But anyway, I did some stuff.
What'd you get up to?
Let's see, Matt's sister's bridal shower was on Saturday. And then I went to a lake house, my friend's lake house, and it was sort of rainy. So not the most ideal weather, but it was fun. I got bit by 1,000 bug bites.
They've been like raging everywhere.
I have been fine all summer, and I'm normally not. I'm normally like the target for them. But yeah, I guess this past weekend, I just got like absolutely eaten alive.
Yeah, in the last few days, I have so many bug bites around my ankles. Why just my ankles? I've been wearing shorts.
Well, to be fair, I think I just had like my bare feet in the grass and I'm covered. My feet are covered in bug bites, which has to be the worst place, I think. And so I just woke up in the middle of the night, like scratching my feet. And I was like, oh no, this is horrible.
This is a little odd, but I have heard someone say toothpaste, especially on feet. If you put like toothpaste on the spots that are itchy and then cover it in socks, because whatever's in the like tingly, the thing that makes your mouth tingle.
Maybe peppermint, because I did read this morning when I Googled home remedies. It said peppermint oil was good.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're willing to put toothpaste on your feet, but
I don't know. I like slather the banana histamine and put socks on, and now I'm just trying not to think about it.
All right. So move on to something
so glad
else
I brought it up. But I haven't really been watching any new TV. I'll write about The Patient this week in Double Take in the newsletter. There's only 2 episodes out so far, though. It's that Steve Carell, Donald Gleason show. And it's good. It's super short.
You were really excited about this one.
The episodes was watching the first episode. I was super into it. And then the episode ended and I was like, hello, I think that was 18 minutes long. It was 22, but still like weird for a show that I like definitely did not think was going to be short. And it isn't really a comedy in any way. So I don't really understand why they made them so short. And it's Hulu. So, and I have ads on Hulu. So it's like 3 minutes of a show and then 2 minutes of ads and then another 3 minutes of the show and then 2 minutes of ads. And so that part's a little painful, but the show itself is really good. And I'm excited to see more. But then, otherwise just watching House of the Dragon. So shall we talk about it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So House of the Dragon, the first 3 episodes are out so far. I admittedly was fairly skeptical as a person that did not love the original
skeptical
Game of Thrones. I would say if we weren't doing this, there's a good chance I wouldn't even have watched it. Like I wasn't too excited about it. You could say I was not excited at all about it. Fairly neutral though. Like I didn't expect to hate it. I expected to feel the same as I felt about the original Game of Thrones, which was just like, I watched all of it. It was fine. I just wanted to be able to talk to people about it. Honestly, like if I think about it, like, why did I watch all of it? It was just to be a part of something.
Yeah, I can imagine that I would have for this show not watched it until many more episodes were out, maybe even all of them. And then sort of on a day where I didn't have anything else to watch and maybe was taking pictures of all my clothes, for instance, would have put it on in the background. And you're right, if people had started tweeting about it or talking about it, or there was specific discourse about like particular characters or themes or whatever, I'd be like, all right, let me check this out, see what's up, so I can possibly participate and or just have opinions and keep them in my head. But
yeah, I do feel like so far. Sorry, you finished what you were gonna say.
No, I said now we've watched it, so we're in it.
Oh, now we're in it. But I was trying to figure out, like, do you think it's been as culturally pervasive so far as Game of Thrones? Because I don't feel like it is. But they said it was like the biggest, was like 10.2 million people watched the second episode or something like that.
Oh, wow. I did not see those stats, but I haven't heard as many people talking about it. I do maybe think that's a product of Game of Thrones. I want to say even the first season, not everyone had HBO. I feel like people got HBO to watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking of like the 7th and 8th seasons, like when like an episode would come out and like you went into work. Well, I also wonder if that's part of it, like the lack of going into an office where people are talking to each other. Because I would go into work and it would be like everybody was talking about Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I mean, friends of mine that watched Game of Thrones have not started watching House of Dragon, are not super like, all right, I need to do this whole medieval world all over again. So,
yeah. And that's probably because people didn't like, I have to assume like a lot of my friends who aren't watching it yet, like who really didn't like the end of Game of Thrones and weren't super stoked to like start watching this.
Yeah, it's the same. I'm saying this without, I could have looked this up, but it's the same writers as Game of Thrones, question mark, that wound up doing the end. Oh no, entirely different people.
Well, I know it's 2 different showrunners. Okay. And then you said writers specifically, and I'm sure there's like a team of writers, and I don't know if any of them like overlap, but the 2 showrunners are different.
Got it. Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's sort of
in them.
Unfair to like expect this to be bad because season 8 was bad. And I get, you know, it's just sort of like lingering resentment and bad feelings about it. But it's interesting that people feel that way and they're sort of lumping them together and that therefore they don't want to start watching this. Whereas my perspective on it was like, oh, like another chance for this to be actually a good show that I'm going to like, because I didn't super love Game of Thrones and I thought the ending was bad. But my perspective on that was funny because I like just never really liked the show that much. So I was like, oh, now we don't like it. Like now everybody's talking about how this show's bad. Like I thought it was the same. And that's not really fair. Like I see why people were disappointed in it and how it could have been better, even as a person that like never actually cared that much about it. But for this one, I was like, oh, maybe I'll really like this plot. Maybe I'll really like these characters. Like it's a new show. Like, let's go into it fresh, like an opportunity for me to enjoy it.
2 things. One, I think you made this point maybe in the last podcast that when you were first starting to watch it, it's hard, even within 3 episodes. I don't know if you feel differently now. It is a little hard to have characters that I care about, which I feel like Game of Thrones did really well in their first episode, giving us, even if people turned out differently than we thought they were going to, sort of set you up with certain expectations of like, oh, these are good guys, these are nasty guys, oh, it's already intrigue. And they did that, but it felt, at least to me, a little drier, sort of like the Silmarillion for Lord of the Rings fans, if you're familiar at all, which is like a lot of the backstory, which I feel like a lot of Lord of the Rings fans wind up either reading or looking into because they want to know more about the world, but it's not any like character building, exciting stuff. It's like very dry, almost history.
It's like an encyclopedia.
It's like an encyclopedia, which is a little bit how the first 2 episodes, at least, kind of, maybe even the third, felt like to me.
Interesting. So it is based off of, so George R. R. Martin wrote a book that is about the Targaryens, and that's what this is based off of, but it's not, and I haven't read it, but I've heard that it's not really a novel, that it's sort of the same way as, maybe not the same way as the Silmarillion, but like not an encyclopedia, but a history of the Targaryens, and that the way it's told is very dry, and that it's told from sort of like different perspectives, like the same timeline is told from different perspectives, or at least I guess centering different main characters in a way that makes certain events unsure or like muddy, like 2 different
unreliable narrators.
So you're not like really sure what the actual event was necessarily. That's why and I could be, like I said, this is secondhand info, but the podcast I was listening to that was talking about this, they were saying that, they read the book and that was their takeaway from it, was that they didn't actually know exactly what was going to happen in the show because there were different ways that the events could play out based on that text. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Oh,
but I
yeah.
also made that connection where I was like, oh, I wonder if it's sort of like the Silmarillion, but I haven't read either. So
oh no, I have there's no way I would have read similar. But
did you read the original series, the Game of Thrones? Like, did you read all the books?
I read
the ones that are out so far.
I want to say I read the first 3.5 books. Maybe just the first 3. Is Way of Kings, whatever. I read the first one, fell in love with Arya. I would sometimes skip ahead to Arya chapters because the same, I mean, Game of Thrones is also written in different perspectives. So you have like a chapter that's Joffrey, a chapter that I don't think there's ever a Joffrey chapter, but from like one specific character's perspective. So I would skip ahead.
I read the first 1.5 and then couldn't get through the second. I just thought it got really boring and I think I gave up. But that happened to me
for the third.
That's the funny thing about that. Like, I loved that first book. Like, I remember this was before Kindles, I guess. I had the first book with me at Disney World, and every time we would like stand in line and have downtime, like I was just reading this giant, because those books are so thick. Like I was just pulling that out and like carrying it around with me so that I could read it anytime we had downtime. Because I was like, this is so good. I'm so intrigued. Yeah. And I loved it so much. And that's why, and that was 2012, which is when the first season came out, before people were into it. And I watched the first episode because I was so excited. And I was like, oh no, like this is not for me. Like, it was violent. And I was like, yeah, all this stuff like happens in the book.
Somehow when you're
true
reading
to it at that point,
you can glaze over.
Yeah. I mean, I've read plenty of like violence and battle scenes and stuff in books before and never really had an issue with it, but they like went really hardcore with it in Game of Thrones, obviously, with the violence and everything. And I was just like, oh no, I'm not gonna be able to watch this. And then I stopped for years until I realized it was like this huge cultural phenomenon, it became one. So then I watched it again. And so, like I said, like I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the stories. I feel like I need to say this because I like said I watched it only because everyone else did. Like, I did have a reason to be interested in it. I just couldn't really handle the violence. So I was a little bummed when I watched the first episode of House of the Dragon and it was more violent. Yeah. I thought it was pretty hardcore violent.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe it's because I haven't watched the Game of Thrones seasons. I haven't rewatched them at all. And it's possible that they are just as violent, just as early, but I had the same thought.
The first ever episode of Game of Thrones was not super violent. You're right. I haven't rewatched it in a while. I remember there being just enough violence for me to be like, oh, this is a lot. But this one was, and I think it's just the birth scene was, or if you could even call it that, was traumatizing. Like I could barely watch it. And then, so I rewatched the first 2 episodes yesterday before watching the third one. And I literally fast forwarded it. I was like, I don't even want this to be on in the background. Like, it is horrifying.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think, and looking, it's a bummer that the showrunners, is an interview from, I don't know how long ago, where they said, the original series had a lot of sexual violence and we want to avoid that, or, we're not going to replicate that here. And then the very first episode, there's the traumatizing birth scene. I'm like, well, it's not sexual assault, but it is pretty extreme, like violence against women.
And also a lot of, violence that women have to bear without being able to choose anything. Like in a way, it's still an assault.
Right. Exactly.
But still, yeah.
And she sort of foreshadows it. Emma foreshadows it when she says like the child bed is our battlefield. And right away I was like, I'm not going to like where this is going. And then that's the thing I think my main gripe with the show, or my main issue with the show, and this is more of an issue with society maybe, but why do we have to watch shows where this is a fantasy show and it's supposed to be, I guess, like reminiscent of actual patriarchal societies, or, even like 14th century Europe. Like, I don't even know if it's like medieval, but just like in the lines of succession and how like obviously women weren't rulers and there was plenty of, I'm sure sexual violence towards women and basically just a lot of misogyny. But why do we need to watch that? I don't know. Like I'm watching the show and I'm like, okay, so I'm angry. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's the real world. Like I'm angry at the real world. But why do we need that in a show?
Yeah. Why do we need to reinforce that this
like,
is the way it
what
was?
If we had, why can't we watch a show where something like good things happen to women and I can just feel happy?
One of the things that I was a little surprised, and maybe I was naive, and maybe I was also willfully misremembering, when Daenerys begins her sort of march toward the throne. I sort of remembered that she partially did that because there was some precedent of like, not only was she a Targaryen and had control of the dragons, but there were powerful Targaryen women in my mind, and that wasn't such a crazy thing to sort of grasp onto, that she could be the ruler of the Iron, she could take the Iron Throne or whatever.
Well, there'd never been a woman on the Iron Throne.
No, but I thought that there had been sort of like powerful dragon riding Targaryen women. And so in my head, the same sort of political power plays of anything to keep a woman from the throne would not be front and center. In fact, it is. And it's like the main storyline of this TV show. But so maybe I'm entirely just remembering what I want to remember and not anything that actually happened. But I was just like, surprised.
Honestly don't remember. Yeah, I don't particularly remember that.
Yeah.
But it does seem weird. Like it seems like they're sort of building up to this, especially in episode 3, they keep talking about, Rhaenyra is the heir to the throne. Mm-hmm. Is she going to be supplanted by Aegon?
Oh yeah.
And that they're like really setting up this question. And to be honest, I don't actually know where this goes because I didn't read the book and I haven't looked up like book spoilers. I'm fairly certain she doesn't end up on the throne because I feel like they say there's never been a woman on the throne. Am I wrong? I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
Don't quote me on that. But I mean, I like not knowing where it's going, but I still feel like the point is to like show that women are less than, like the point of the show isn't going to be, at least it doesn't seem like it's going to be like, oh, like women actually get everything they want in the end. Like I don't know.
You're right. I don't think that's the moral of the story.
And I would love if it were. That's all I'm saying. It's like, what if in the end women did get everything they deserved?
Yeah.
She's like the smartest person in the show. And they're so obviously painting this picture of Viserys being a, very indecisive, sort of like weak ruler. And Rhaenyra is smart and decisive, and it just like gets overlooked because she's a woman.
Yeah.
Gets no respect because she's a woman.
Yeah. All of those things.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, it's just the classic cliches of like, okay, she talks at the small council meeting, people and they like send her away. And it's like, as a woman who has been talked over in meetings or whatever it is, you're just like, ugh, this is so annoying. Like, this is relatable in a freaking annoying way. Like,
I don't want to
watch this. Like, I want good things to happen.
Oh, to her. Yeah. Especially she flies in on her dragon and fixes a problem that other people are trying to fix and are failing at more than once, but I'm mostly thinking of with her uncle.
Yeah.
When she like flies in and
gets like the dragon Otto was back. Like not gonna fix it if it's gonna like escalate it. Yeah,
exactly. Fixes it, comes back, zero recognition that it's just like, oh great, this problem's solved, which again I relate to like many work scenarios where there's been a huge problem, I have fixed it, and then we just move
and get like no credit.
Get no credit, or also just act like it wasn't a big problem to begin with, and you're like, okay, listen.
Right.
Whatever.
It's so classic. And then the other thing, I guess, is similarly while watching it being like, yeah, this is a thing that could happen, but I don't need to watch it play out, is this, 2 teenage girls are friends and then a man comes between them. It's like obviously a little more fucked up because it's her dad. And so, they do this time jump. It's episode 3. They time jump 3 years.
3 years.
So they're 17 now. And so, right. So
14.
Yeah.
Are they the same age?
Disturbing and on many levels. I don't know if I know they say 17. They say that Rhaenyra is 17. I don't know if they actually say specifically how old Allison is.
Right.
But I think you're supposed to assume they're the same age. Right. So it's like, okay, I'm 14. Okay, like imagine like it's 9th grade Jess and Jenni. Actually, I don't want to make this too personal because it gets creepy really fast. Okay,
yeah, I don't.
Imagine there's two teenage girls you've never met. They're 14. And one of them, her mom dies. And then your dad, okay, I
understand.
I just hate
watched
everything about this. Right. It's just that when I started to think about it like that, I was like, okay, this is horrifying. Obviously, on literally every level, but the like crux of like the awkwardness when Allison walks into the garden and Rhaenyra is sitting there and she's like, she's like a moody teen, but for fair reason. But then Allison is all like, sort of like, Allison is like haughty almost, and like,
she's above it all. She's like, it doesn't need to be this way.
And I'm like, what if you were just like a normal person for a second and like not a freak? I don't know. I didn't like the way she was acting. And then I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was like, no, it does. Like, because it's like a classic, I don't know.
Yeah, I think when a teen, okay, it's a classic girl fight, but also Allison being sort of seeming above it all. I feel like once you're a teenager and are given sort of a position of power or treated like an adult, and then you see someone else who's sulking, you're a little bit like, wow, I can't believe I was ever so immature. Like you immediately take on.
She thinks she's so mature. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's watching. Oh, that's what it was. It like made my skin crawl. I was like, ugh, not the 18-year-old girl who thinks she's better than everybody else and better than her old friend. And it made me sad and like, I don't know, definitely slightly uncomfortable.
Especially since when we were talking before and we had just both seen the first episode and you had made the comment, like, I feel like I don't know who to root for. I was like, oh, these two girls, these two friends.
And they're like cute in the first episode. Like, I love the way they set that up and their friendship's so nice. And then I'm like, why do we need women fighting against each other again? Like, it's just all these, I don't know, all these classic storylines of like, just, I don't know. It's very misogynistic, this show. Which is I don't know. And the showrunners have said like, oh, we wanted to show, what did they say? They wanted to show the misogyny or like the patriarchy of the time period to which I think the tweet I saw was like, period. Oh yes, the time period of like the dragons.
Oh, speaking of dragons, there could be more dragons in this show. I'm just going to say, like, it's called a House of Dragons. I'm sure it takes a lot of CGI to make dragons happen. We've seen dragons. I feel like
there's a lot of dragons. I feel like
mostly in battle scenes.
Yeah,
I want to see the dragons
when
like
they use them.
I know, but Rhaenyra's.
I think you should rewatch How to Train Your Dragon. If you,
maybe
you just want dragons like playing.
I want Rhaenyra's like holding out her hand and her dragon like nuzzling.
Yeah. I think there's 3 How to Train Your Dragon movies. Great news for you. Really good news for you.
Now I know what to do next weekend.
Those are really cute movies. I do like this.
I would like more cuddly dragons.
The dragons are sort of like not trainable. Like I feel like they're leaning more into this idea that like, and they say, what does she say? Rhaenyra says, Targaryens are closer to, people say the Targaryens are closer to gods than humans. But like she says something like, but we can't, or maybe her dad says, like we can't control them. Yeah. He says something. Yeah. And I feel like that is foreshadowing of some sort.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty obvious foreshadowing, but I kind of like that I feel like they're going to show the dragons more and show how like, they're not actually in control of them. They have this power because of them, but there's, that was sort of accidental. Almost.
It's a volatile relationship. It's not steady at all.
Yeah. So one major thing that happened in the first episode, and major in the way that like, I heard somebody say it was major. And then I was like, oh, okay. Because like I said, I'm not as deep in the lore. I'm not in the lore at all.
Okay.
But in the first episode, but this is lore related. The first episode, Viserys says after he like, appoints Rhaenyra as heir to the throne, tells her this like secret that's been handed down from generation of Targaryen to generation of Targaryen that started with Aegon, which was like Aegon had to unite the 7 kingdoms so that he could one day take down like the winter that's coming.
Right.
It's like how they put it. And
North of
so
the wall.
as a person that's seen the show, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's how they're like connecting the events of Game of Thrones to this. And like, that's kind of cool. But then, like I said, I was supposed to like listening to this other podcast and they're talking about like the books and the lore, and that's not in the books. And it's really not in the show at all that like anybody knew about it beforehand. So actually this was like a major retcon basically for them to say that the Targaryens knew this whole time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it some more. I think it actually makes the show worse. I think it makes the original Game of Thrones show worse to know that. And I'm really curious why they did this, why they decided that the Targaryens knew the whole time. Because if that's true, that means like the foreshadowing, or like the people should have been worried about the White Walkers, and I guess the Targaryens were, for 200, no, more than 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the White Walkers are like in like 4 episodes of Game of Thrones ultimately. And that's everybody's a lot of the argument of like why people didn't like the 8th season, right? Is like all this build up and then it's pretty short. Like the actual the White Walkers being there and the confrontation with them is pretty short. But doesn't it make it worse to know that apparently they knew for 200 years?
It does. I wonder, I didn't bump on that quite as much because I was like, okay, well, there's a wall. There must have been a wall for some reason. It sort of was like everyone knew they were defending this wall against something, but it sort of at the point of Game of Thrones seemed a little like a joke, but not really. It was sort of just like, yeah, we're watching over this wall where nothing really happens, but every once in a while we have to do something about it. And so when he told the secret and was like, there was this premonition that there's something coming from the north. It wasn't like there are specifically like winter demons that are coming to
winter
like,
demons. No, that's
it was
true.
just sort of like there's a threat that we need to be united to face. It is frustrating because then they spent the entire Game of Thrones being like, hey, we need to be united to face this. And instead there was all this infighting.
Yeah. I just feel like at the end of the day, if you were told this, would you really be like, oh yes, I can only tell the person who takes over the throne? Or would you be like, hey everybody, my whole small council at the very least, like here's a threat that might be imminent. Like, let's talk about how to plan for it.
Do we think the wall is built at this point?
I think they say something about the wall. Okay.
I don't remember. Maybe I was not watching I was not critically reading this season.
I know. I was like trying to think back because I did rewatch the first 2 episodes. I think they talk about the wall.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the only, I was a little bit like, okay, yeah, sure. They know there's some sort of threat, so they built the wall and it's been around for as long as the Targaryens have been in power because this one guy was like, hey, we got to protect against this stuff that way.
I just don't really see why they felt the need to put that into the show when it does like sort of rewrite all of Game of Thrones in that way.
I'm guessing it's just so that people who watched Game of Thrones can feel like, I know what that's about. Like, just to make them feel.
I think it's stupid.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that feels like it's literally just thrown in there to be like for people who watched Game of Thrones. Yeah. Like even every time they say like, okay, in the 3rd episode, like how many times did that dude say Casterly Rock? And we were like, we get it. You're a Lannister. Like you're from Casterly Rock. Like, and yes, we all know what Casterly Rock is. Like, and maybe I'm just overthinking it because
I didn't have the same reaction of like, yeah, we get it. You're saying all the things from Game of Thrones. I was a little like, this is going to be so confusing. I already, when they say like Baylor and like all of these names,
the names are all the same.
Yeah, because they were all named after people, or like Aegon, who we didn't meet at all, but was talked about. Like different Aegons were talked about during Game of Thrones. I'm waving my pen around in frustration, but like I don't know which one now they're talking about. And I'm trying to remember back to Game of Thrones where they would talk about some sort of like ancestor. And I'm like, oh wait, there are 17 people with the same name. How am I ever to know who were, because that could be kind of fun to be like, oh, we're seeing this play out the way that they sort of talked about this person in Game of Thrones. But yeah, I'm never going to know.
I don't think there's a lot of direct, like, I think a lot of the characters we're seeing right now, I don't think we're ever like specifically brought up in Game of Thrones. I think that was part of the point of like making this 200 years before so that they like didn't have to make everything connect.
So like family names of, I don't know,
I mean, there's
I'm
definitely
just saying
stuff that
Baylor now.
connects, but I
And
think
some of the Lannister names are the same as we'll have later.
right. But that's sort of like okay, I literally wrote down, I feel like I'm in AP Euro again because I'm like, oh, this sister who has the same name as the cousin who is, and I was like looking up, I'm on like Game of Thrones Wikipedia. I'm like, whose mom is that? And like, who's the grandma of the Viserys says something about his grandma at one point, I think. And I was like, who
are we supposed
how
to know
does
who
that
this
connect
is?
to Jaehaerys? Because like the first scene in the first episode is like Jaehaerys talking about the line of succession. And then I went down that rabbit hole of like, oh, who even were those people, to find out that, because I thought at first it was like sort of a distant relative of Jaehaerys, because they say there were like 14 claims to succession. Sorry, I really jumped back. I was talking about the very first scene in the first episode.
Yeah. I thought Viserys was Jaehaerys's
grandpa. Jaehaerys is Viserys' grandfather.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, and maybe they say that, and I missed
but
it
Jaehaerys
twice,
wasn't. Yeah. Okay.
Because then Rhaenys is his granddaughter, and so that's how. And then they do say Viserys and Rhaenys are cousins. The queen who never was, Rhaenys. And they do say that, but I just like, I don't know, I missed something in all of that connecting. So then I'm literally on Game of Thrones Wikipedia and reading about like Jaehaerys's kids and their names, and they had lots of other kids, and all these people are literally not even mentioned. They're not even like in the first scene when they talk about Jaehaerys. Like, it's all very much skipped over, but it all exists. Like you were saying, how like, the Silmarillion is like an encyclopedia for the Lord of the Rings universe. That like just the fact that you can go down like a Wikipedia rabbit hole of like whose grandfather was, and they have like birth dates and like
it's definitely
dates, and I'm like, it's a hardcore, very built out universe.
It's a little cool that like it exists so that it is so built out and so thoroughly exists that you could look into it if you wanted to, but it makes watching the show a little bit, especially when there are just small name drops.
Studying,
and then I'm like, wait, is that important? Should I know who that is? But a lot of the times it's no. Like,
I know, I kept pausing it to literally look up stuff like that. That's why I was like, oh, I'm studying. Like this is the line of succession that I'm studying. Just like, I literally was like, I'm in 11th grade again.
Okay.
And I guess some people really like that. I think that's part of the appeal, but I mean, it's like a little much for me to have to pause the show to be like, who is this person?
Yeah. That's, I think, what originally, keep going back to Lord of the Rings, but like drew people in is that that's probably not true. There are many things about Lord of the Rings that draw people in, but the fact that the world is so real, I think is a selling
it's definitely
point.
A selling point. I think when like the names are difficult on top of all the names being like reused all the time, that's where I started to be like, oh, this could be a little easier for us, knowing that like it's not real life and we don't have to make it as complicated. But I suppose that was like George R. R. Martin's like, I don't know, that's part of what he wanted, for it to be sort of reminiscent of that like European time.
Yeah.
I mean, it clearly is in a lot of ways.
Yes. Speaking of names, I can't get over Matt Smith plays Damon, the brother. I love Matt Smith. I keep referring to him in my head as Matt Damon, which is not who he is.
That's amazing.
But I kept trying to I kept trying to talk about it, and I'd be like, oh, Matt Damon in this. No, Matt Smith plays Damon.
Matt Damon. Okay. Now that you said that, do you like Matt Smith in this show?
So far, yes.
I liked him as the Doctor, right? When you say like you love him, it's because of Doctor Who.
I loved him because of Doctor Who. He's been in a couple of other shows as well. He was in The Crown. He was very unlikable in The Crown, but I thought he did a good job. And so I think coming from that, I'm like, he's very unlikable here. So far, I don't know that much about Damon, except that he's kind of impulsive and unlikable and doesn't seem super fit for, I don't know, actually. Do I think that he's super unfit for The Crown? Yeah, he's very violent. Don't like that. But mostly we're just set up to think that he's not fit for The Crown.
Well, you get he's very immature. Like Joffrey vibes from him.
Yeah. I haven't seen him personally
violent.
Torture anyone. It's mostly on like battlefieldy things, but yeah, I guess
the City Watch in the first episode, where he rounded up criminals and then like violently murdered them all with like no due process.
That's terrible. I just like
just that little thing.
less Joffrey, like as though like bringing personal people into his
like we're not sure that he's like definitely like sadistic. No,
he's definitely fair. a little crazy and violent tendencies. By a little, I mean a lot.
But I also didn't mean, do you like his character? I
You meant
honestly don't know if I like him in this.
you don't
I
think he's
also
doing a
liked
good
Matt Smith as the doctor. I think
portrayal.
he was like fun
Mhm.
in Doctor Who. I think he's a good actor. I think he's acting well. I just, I don't know. There's something about him in this role
Is
that
he
I'm not
too?
loving.
Is it too like he's too recognizable for you?
Maybe.
And it's just
Well, yeah,
not
to be
fully
fair, when they
blending in.
announced the casting, I was like, oh, I wish that it were somebody I didn't know before, that I like didn't have a view of them as a different character in my head. Because I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that worked well for me, at least like for Game of Thrones. When it first came out, I didn't know any of those people. I think mostly
Yeah.
people, I think they were mostly, oh, I'm gonna say that, and then there's gonna be someone I'm forgetting. But for the most part, the main characters weren't known actors.
The
And this,
older,
to me, I was
yeah.
like, that's a very known actor. Like I was shocked they picked Matt Smith.
Yeah, in Game of Thrones, the older actors and actresses were, some of them had been in things like I think Caitlin Stark, Catelyn, Kate,
Callan.
what Catelyn Stark has been like I had seen her in things, but I had thought of it as sort of, and definitely nothing as big as Doctor Who, but sort of
No,
more
that's true.
like,
The older actors, there were a few
but
that had
yeah, but
definitely been in stuff. I mean, obviously, like Tyrion Lannister,
oh yeah,
everybody knew that actor. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just that like the Doctor is such an iconic lead role that like
mhm. Yeah, and a lot of
I
the
don't know if it's that
other,
I'm seeing the Doctor when I'm watching the show, and it's
you're like,
just
why
like
are you so mean now?
awkward to me. Maybe that is what it is. I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm just like, there's something about it. I just wish it were. Yeah, maybe I don't believe him as a villain, and I didn't watch
Mhm.
The Crown, so I don't have that.
I was gonna say that was a little jarring for me to watch The Crown and be like, yeah, because I don't like you. Why are you doing this? But I think that
Yeah.
maybe helped watching this. But I think there are some other in House of Dragon actors who I've seen before. I'm trying to think off the top of my head now that I say that, but in other British TV shows or movies or whatever, but nothing super well known.
Yeah.
Nothing where, yeah, for many
I think it
seasons.
must just be the fact that he's a villain in this,
Yeah,
because they
could be.
announced Olivia Cook, and they haven't had her in there
Mhm.
yet because they're waiting for the time jump. But Olivia Cook's going to be older Allison, and I was
Mhm.
like hyped when I heard that because I
Mhm.
love that actress and she's been in plenty of stuff that I've seen, and I don't think that's going to like take away from this character for me. But
Huh. This is, sorry.
I
I
was
was
just gonna
gonna
say, like, I
say,
don't think she's a villain. So I think maybe
yeah.
that's part of it, is like the villain in this is like somebody
Mhm.
that has never been a villain in my
Mhm.
view before.
Yeah, that seems fair.
I think that's always hard. It's hard to go the other way too. Like people who always play villains suddenly being a good person. Like that's
Mhm.
why you see
And you're like,
villains
I
typecast
see
so often.
evil
Like
things
as
in your
if they're
eyes.
always a villain,
Yeah.
like everything they're in. There's like, I think, a reason for that. I think it's hard to see somebody do both. And like good for Matt Smith that he's actually quite good at it. I mean, he's
Mhm.
definitely acting well in this. I'm not trying to say he's not
Yeah.
believable as a villain. I'm just like struggling just a
You
little
don't
bit.
like seeing him that way.
I do think he's the only one that really pulls off the hair, though, I will say. I think it's because
Wow.
he's already
Yeah.
blonde. Like, so he has the blonde eyebrows.
Is he
He's like a sort of
blonde?
blonde person in real
I
life,
think
isn't
of
he?
him as having red
Dirty
or
blonde.
not red hair. Whoa, brown hair and no eyebrows. But
I think
maybe
it's like
eyebrows do help.
very light brown at darkest.
I'm gonna send you a picture
It's
of
not
Matt's.
bright blonde, but it's not dark hair. It's like
Um,
light brown.
pulling out
Don't look it
the.
up right now. We
Oh,
can just
it's brown. It's just
save it.
surely brown.
All right, fine. He doesn't have any eyebrows then. I'm sorry.
Yes, I
I
think
just
that
thought
does
they were
help.
blonde. He basically has blonde eyebrows.
Yeah, I think I
Whatever
would
his
say
natural hair color is, his eyebrows are very light and like not dyed. Like they were like
no.
that in Doctor Who.
Yes.
So yeah, there's something about like Viserys with like the dark beard,
Yeah.
especially, that I'm just like, did we think about dyeing it? Like, what's the idea here? What was the plan? And it's like one thing, like Rhaenyra's has dark brown eyebrows, and I don't get it, because I'm like, is it supposed to be like when someone dyes their hair blonde? Yeah, they don't dye their eyebrows
Sometimes they do a little.
most
I
of the
have no
time.
idea.
Plenty of people don't, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I think it doesn't look weird necessarily. But if all of their hair is supposed to be like that because that's like the Targaryen hair, then like
Hmm.
wouldn't their eyebrows be blonde and his
Yeah,
beard
you'd think
would be
so.
blonde? So
Or at
I
least a
struggle with
little
that.
lighter, you know?
I'm like, is it supposed to look like it's dyed? Because that's kind of weird. It's a
Maybe
bit
some of
odd.
them were not born with it. And so, in order to stay on top of it, they bleach their hair. I don't know. That would be an interesting storyline.
Like, does
to have someone
yeah,
secretly
does
bleaching their
bleaching your
hair,
hair exist? And that would be so out of place.
like a lemon juice or something. I don't know, something very acidic.
I did laugh. No, I don't know why this reminded me of that, but I did laugh at the scene where Rhaenyra is in the garden and she's using the bard as like her personal like Spotify, like
Yeah.
definitely like going through the teen phase. Like, I'm just gonna listen to this like sad song over and over.
Yeah. Put on the
And she's literally
headphones and
telling
drown everything else
play it
out.
again from the start. I was like, oh no, this is so funny.
Yeah. I did like that a lot too. I really like her. I really like so far, and I think just because I'm set up to like him, Kristen Cole, because he's a confidant for her.
Yeah,
Kristen, yeah.
I know. I sort of don't like that I feel like they're building up this like it's almost like a
Romance.
rom-com. I'm like, oh, like it's like
Yeah,
they're meet cute and then like they keep running into each other. And I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. Maybe I did have that thought. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is supposed to be the love interest. And then I was like, no, they wouldn't do something so obvious, but I've fallen into that trap before. So if that is the case, I'll
I
see
think
how
the
I
way they
feel.
kept showing him in the third episode while they keep talking about like marrying Rhaenyra off,
Mm,
I was like, okay, that's
yeah,
definitely where this is going. It's gonna be like, and I could be wrong, but I thought it was gonna be like she ends up like betrothed to somebody else, but like actually
but
likes
loves
Kristen.
him.
Yeah,
If
that's
he,
what
she
was
winds
where I
up
thought I was
betrothed to
going.
her brother, her half brother, which doesn't
Oh, that
seem
was
all
so
that.
creepy.
It doesn't seem impossible given what that the Targaryens were
Right,
all
the
super
Targaryens
inbred.
were incestuous. That's
Ugh.
like the point. I know it's funny because I sort of forgot that when they said that, I was like, oh, that's a joke, right? Then I was like, oh no, wait, that was like the Targaryens thing.
And the thing that
So
I hate about
mega creepy. But
yeah, and like
Viserys immediately like laughs. He's like,
he
no, he's
did,
too.
but we already know he's sort of like an unreliable, undecided person who
No,
changes
for sure.
mind
It
on
could
a
still go
whim.
that way. But I at least appreciated that he was like immediately not into it.
Yeah, yeah, same.
Actually, that's interesting because I just interesting in the fact that like I really spent the third episode trying to figure out if I liked Viserys or not. Because at first I was like, oh, this is just like a
Just feel
normal
bad for him.
dude. Like he's like trying to be a good dad. He cared. He kept bringing up that he like cared about Rhaenyra, like cared that she was like happy and genuinely like content, and seemed like he was like worried about her well being. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird for like the king
Mhm.
on the Iron Throne. Like seems out
He
of place based on other kings that we've seen.
he doesn't
But
seem
then,
vicious. He doesn't seem malicious, but he does seem not wise and not good
yeah,
at
okay,
yeah.
he's not good at being a king for sure. But then
Or a
that's what I'm
dad.
saying is like, well, is being good at being king sort of like antithetical with being a good dad? And does that mean he's a bad king,
He
but
married
able
his
to be a
daughter's
good
best
dad?
friend.
But no, but then yeah. So I'm having this thought and I'm like, oh, like, he really cares. And then I'm watching more of it and I'm like, oh no. Yeah, the fact that he like was supposed to get engaged to Lena Valerian and then was like, nah, I'm into this 14-year-old. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, immediately no, it's
Yeah.
not not for me. And then the fact that that it's his daughter's best friend, and he like can't see that that's what put the wedge
Yeah.
between them, or
And
like
he's
sees it
like,
but like thinks she's being ridiculous. I was like,
yeah, he's
no,
like,
that's
I'm
not
not
great.
above tradition. I'm not above the law. Like people expect me to get married, but he's still doing like what he wants to do within those
Right,
guidelines.
which is why like Rhaenyra is fine with it. Rhaenyra
Right. Yeah.
Rhaenyra. Do I
But
keep saying Rhaenyra?
you
I do.
might, but it's
I've said it like
Daenerys.
18 times. So sorry, everyone. Rhaenyra is
Little
like fine
R
with it when she thinks it's the 12-year-old Lena, which is,
is semi fine with
creepy,
it.
but fine.
Yeah.
She seems resigned to it, but then is immediately unhappy. And you see it, like she's surprised when he announces it at the small council. And like that's where the rift between them sort of
Yeah.
starts. But also he is having this sort of like guilty drunk, like wine drunk mental breakdown about like
It's
wanting to
not
pick
cute.
Aegon. No,
Yeah.
it's definitely not
It's
cute.
very not cute.
But I thought the subtext was like, okay, so he like wants to put Aegon, he wants to name Aegon as heir to the throne, but feels like guilty that he like in this moment of
Mm.
weakness or whatever, thinking he'll never have more children, had already named Rhaenyra
Oh,
as
I thought it was
heir.
the opposite. Oh, maybe. Yeah.
I think that's the like breakdown he was having, was that he
That
like
he had
felt
had,
guilty.
yeah, that he had some sort of vision, and that when it seemed like all was lost, he gave up on the vision and named his daughter as heir. And now that he has a son, he's like, did I make the wrong choice?
Yeah, but I think he thinks he made the wrong choice, and that's why he's having this breakdown, is because he doesn't want to like further let her down or like show that he never believed in her. But he basically says, I never actually believed in her. And I was like, okay, you're no longer good dad in my book.
Yeah. Especially then at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, even though at this point we've been spoiling. I'm just gonna like
I'll put it in the show notes.
Retroactive spoiler note. That what was I saying? Oh, at the end of the episode, he's like, I would never, on your mother's memory, I would never replace you. And I was like, don't believe that snake.
That's definitely a lie. I definitely think that's what the breakdown, the wine drunk little boy breakdown he was having was about. Yeah, he's definitely just like a weak dude.
Also, what pushed him over the edge in terms of me not liking him was the stag scene. The awful hunting scene where he's drunk and so can't even kill the stag on the first thrust. And everyone's coddling him and being like, a little to the left, Lord, like one more time, you'll get it.
Just another way to show that like he's weak.
But I just wanted to I was like, this is the worst. I'm very uncomfortable, which I'm sure was the point of the scene. I hated it. I hated every second.
Lots of scenes to make me uncomfortable. But yeah, that was the one in episode 3 where I was like, I can't watch this. I'm going to look away.
And that, I think I was mentioning this to you earlier, was the scene George R.R. Martin had given this interview where he had a regret about a scene, but in Game of Thrones. And apparently this scene of the hunting session and the stag and this whole episode was to make up for, in some way, the lack of a hunting scene in early Game of Thrones season 1, where Robert Baratheon gets gutted by the boar or whatever, and it's just him and 2-3 of his friends. And he was always like, oh, that's not how a king would hunt. Like I should have had like a hunting party and feasts or whatever. And so I'm even more mad that this was the scene that he wanted to have to replace the one from Game of Thrones. And I'm like, why? I really did not like it. Anyway,
because I didn't read about that, but I thought that the boar attacks Rhaenyra and Kristen and like pretty easily comes up on them. And like even Kristen, like, you know, a knight has a hard time, like is taken by surprise and could have been killed. I thought that was supposed to be like a callback to like, oh, even if Robert had been sober, it would have been hard for it like was supposed to make more sense how he got like killed by a boar. I thought it was supposed to be like
another retconning, not retconning, but
like justify his death. Justice for Robert Baratheon. That's what I thought that was.
Oh wow, I did not read into that part.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't. That's what I thought. Or it was just supposed to, I think it was supposed to dually show like the weakness of Viserys with the stag, and then the like sort of
comparative
strength of Rhaenyra with the boar.
I didn't quite know what to read into it. Didn't exactly know what my response was supposed to be, but I did think she looked like a badass walking in to back to where everyone was with blood all over her. She's sort of so striding past.
The way she cleaned off like only the blood on her face, but like left it on her neck. I was like, yeah, cool move.
Yeah, I was like, you look friggin' awesome.
She's great. I'm actually sort of annoyed that so in the 5th episode, they're going to time jump 10 years. That's not a spoiler because they literally announced the older cast. Like, you know, everybody knows at this point that there's a time jump going to happen.
It's Crown-esque.
And and I didn't watch The Crown, but I'm just sad because I really, really like the actress that plays Rhaenyra.
Yeah. Do you know if all of is like Matt Smith also going to have a time jump, or are the older actress just going to have, maybe he's dead.
Yeah,
anyway,
I guess we don't know what happens in 10 years to those characters, but no, the only ones that I know of from like casting, at least, they're definitely replacing Alicent and Rhaenyra, which is interesting because like, okay, it's a 10-year time jump and supposedly they're 17. So they're going to look different at 27. But and beyond the fact
about to
like,
argue that you don't look any different than you did at 17.
I look the same as I looked when I was 18. And like, okay, maybe not exactly, but like, come on, they couldn't have just like picked 28-year-old actresses and like aged them down a little, made them look a little more youthful for the 18-year-old scenes. Like, it's not like they don't have 28-year-olds playing 18-year-olds in Riverdale and other teen shows. Like, what's the difference?
I don't know if that's an endorsement for
No, it's not an endorsement. The thing is, like, that's how every show does it. Like, they, there's like a 30-year-old playing Hannah Montana's brother. Like, actors have always played younger. So why do we need two entirely new actresses to play 10-year-older characters? I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Also, the fact that you said Rhaenyra's actress is 22.
So Rhaenyra's actress is 22, and then the time jump actress is Emma Darcy. She's 30. So like, yes,
right,
they're
closer
8
in
years
age
apart, but like
to the actual
that's not
character.
enough of an age gap for them to need a new actress. I just don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little like, it's weird that she's in her 20s already and they can't figure out how to make her look like
they were cool with the
20s.
22-year-old actress playing the 14-year-old.
Right.
But then when the 30-year-old, the 22 actress had to play a 28-year-old, it like wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I do a little bit. I always think, and I feel like people who have known me for a long time are like, oh, you look exactly the same as you did when you were like in 6th grade. But then people who have met me later in life and see pictures of myself in 6th grade are like, are you kidding? Like, no, you
obviously
don't.
You don't look exactly the same. And actually, I think you're one of those people that looks more different. Like, I think if you look at a picture of me at 14, it's like pretty similar.
I do think everyone might think that. I think,
yeah, maybe we all think that. But no, I guess my main point is like, yeah, why can the 22-year-old actress play a 14-year-old character, but then they need a new actress to play a 28-year-old character? And maybe the point is actually that because it would be more unrealistic if she was supposed to be the same looking from 14 to 28.
Yeah.
But then pick a 16-year-old to play a 14-year-old. Like, you picked a 22-year-old. I don't know. There's something about it that's like really bizarre to me. And I guess we'll see how it feels when the actual time jump happens. But it's not like they look exactly the same. And I do think Olivia Cooke does sort of look like the actress that plays Allison. But again, not in the way that like you actually look like a different person 10 years later. Like, yeah, I see some resemblance, but yeah, we'll see if it feels weird. I'm a little bit weirded out by it, but I also just like really like these two actresses, especially the one that plays Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of sad, but I do love Olivia Cooke, so I'm excited for that. But I don't know. There's something weird.
I'm looking at them side by side right now, and I'm like, that fits. I hear you. I think
pick ones that look the same, similar.
I think in the same way where Matt Smith's being a villain didn't jar me because I watched The Crown. It took me a long time to watch The Crown and to get into it for many reasons. It's not like it's like a nail biter or anything like that. But also, I had the opinion of people get into shows and then start really loving them because they feel a connection to some of the characters, as well as obviously plot. There are a lot of factors that go into whether or not people like TV shows. I'm just saying the feeling a connection to specific actors and it feeling jarring when they leave or are replaced because of a time jump. It happens a lot in The Crown. And I was a little like, I just got used to and like really started liking these people playing Elizabeth and whatever and whatever. And now that they're 10 years older, I mean, it helped that it was not that I'm seeing Olivia Cooke's name. I can't think of the other Olivia. Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, this is gonna kill me.
In The Crown? I haven't seen The Crown.
Coleman. Oh my God. Yeah.
Just a guess.
Yeah. Olivia Colman plays the queen and I love her. And so it helped that I already loved that actress to be like, okay, well, I'm excited to see her, even though I really liked the person who was playing Elizabeth before.
I mean, that's
but anyway,
ultimately how I feel about Olivia Cooke.
I'm not as perturbed.
I'm excited about Olivia Cooke, but I'm really sad about the actress who plays Rhaenyra.
Now. And I think that's fair. I think I'm slightly less annoyed by it currently because I've been prepped by watching The Crown.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I haven't really watched a show where they like aged 10 years and need entirely different actresses, but maybe I wish that they'd done more of like dual timelines with like flashbacks. But now that I watch more of the show, I see why that maybe would not have worked. You sort of need the setup of like how we got there and like feeling this sort of like resentment and all of that. No, yeah. Now that I say it, the timeline hopping would not have made sense.
I want to say one last thing. I don't have that many. I think I've gone through everything on my notes except for in the same way that Rhaenyra walking through camp looking like a badass with blood all over her face. I don't think Matt Smith's character, Matt Damon, is supposed to be a likable character. I, however, did think it was kind of badass and cool, the final scenes of this episode. I don't like battle scenes. I don't know what it was about it, but the fact that he was like,
they didn't show him killing the crab feeder.
That's true. But the like getting, also it was awful. Like he got the letter from his brother and then beat up the person. Truly a don't shoot the messenger moment. Like, why were you beating up Mr. Messenger?
Well, exactly. He's Joffrey.
Yeah, he is terrible. But then the like turnaround of I'm gonna get this guy before my brother's reinforcements show up. I was a little like, this is a little funny. And kind of happened in, I get how people in battles were like written about and exalted. I'm like, that was kind of a cool move. Yeah, right. Not chill. Like you're not supposed to.
The hero
sort of
all on himself or whatever. You know, it's funny. I was reading.
Are we supposed to root for him though?
No, you're just, I think at this point, you're just supposed to see that he's, no, not sort of hero might not be the right word, but he's, you know, he's the hero of the battle. He takes it upon himself and like wins it for everybody. And I think the point is just that we see that it's just setting up his arc and his, you know, potential. And obviously he's going to be like a strong player. And that was the whole point. Like the crab feeder wasn't this like big villain that they sort of propped up in the first few episodes. It just turns out that he was like a guy that quickly died.
Yeah, it was interesting though. I guess I don't like that. I'm fighting the fact that I think that this is a sort of interesting way to show, to do shows where while watching the battle, I was like, I don't understand why I should care about it, but for some reason right now I am invested in who wins. I don't know who I should be rooting for. Like, am I rooting for the crab guy because we don't like Damon? What? Or is this just like a pointlessness of battle type of thing? Like, it doesn't matter. These people got into some sort of fight because they were bored and or were trying to prove something, and it wasn't good for anyone, and a lot of people died for no good reason. And so the fact that I'm trying to pick a side of like who I'm supposed to root for is the problem. Yeah. And I kept like reading into all these things and I was like, wow, this is a really smart way to be like the fruitlessness of war and fighting. I'm like, I bet that's not what they're trying to show.
I mean, I think the point of, I think that's why they didn't show him actually like killing the crab feeder. I think, or not that specifically, but I think the point was just that like it didn't matter. This battle actually didn't matter, and the whole point of this whole setup was just to like show that Damon is a strong fighter, a strong opponent.
And yet it took up a good portion of the episode.
Right. And also that's probably what, so I was saying, like, I read a thing on Reddit that was like, people were like not happy with they were like, this is like the worst battle scene in all of like Game of Thrones, you know, the Game of Thrones universe. And I was like, why she didn't mind it that much? And I think it's because it like wasn't super, super violent, that I was like, okay, this is fine. And like the fact that we didn't have to like watch him kill the crab feeder, I was like, nice.
Great. Yeah. And it was like thousands of people against this one guy running through a thing of arrows, which just objectively looks kind of cool, where you're like, oh, don't get hit, don't get hit. And then I'm like, wait,
it's sort of cheap to have a dragon. Anytime the dragon comes out in battle, I'm like, it's just not really fair, which is literally the point. That the Targaryens will always win because of dragons.
Did the guy that was on the dragon, did we know that he was a dragon rider?
Who was on the dragon?
I didn't see his face, but I kind of had the thought of like Damon was the only dragon rider. And again, I don't know why.
No, there's definitely a bunch of dragon riders, because Rhaenyra in the small council meeting where she interrupts, she says like, send the dragon riders.
No, not the only dragon rider ever. I just meant in that specific, like, we didn't see any other dragons when the little strategy meeting was happening and Damon just sort of landed. It made me think he was the only one at that battle scene that could.
That's not what I took away from that.
Got it. Okay.
But
anyway,
they don't make it clear. I just assume like he has maybe one or two. Yeah, clearly he's
just got a few dragons in his back pocket.
I don't know. One random thing that I thought while watching the episode that I hadn't said yet. So the guy who plays Jason Lannister, well, actually he plays both the Lannister twins. He looked so familiar. So I looked him up and he's in the first Game of Thrones. He's
Really?
in the first season of the original series for
Is he a Lannister?
one episode. No, he's like, I think his name is Hugh. I can't remember if he has like a Hugh of the Vale, I think might be his name.
All right.
He's in like 2 episodes, but he looked familiar and I'm pretty sure that I didn't recognize anything else on his IMDb. So I think I must have recognized him from this, from Game of Thrones, but he is just like a knight who he's killed in one of the tournaments. He's killed by Clegane. But yeah, they brought him back and I was like, you couldn't have found an actor who hadn't been already in Game of Thrones.
I have not looked up. There have been a couple of people that have looked familiar to me. And I had the thought, I wonder if these people were in Game of Thrones just as smaller
There's
characters.
probably other ones. That was
There's a bald guy. I'll look it up for if we talk about it again, about House of Dragon again.
But also some of them just sort of look like they
similar.
like could have been in. Yeah, like a lot of the dudes just have like the same
that
look,
vibe.
like the small council guys.
I thought, this is a slightly separate, I thought Kristen Cole was recast for some reason. He looked different enough to me between the first episode and the third episode where I was like, did they get a new actor? They didn't.
No, he looked the same to me.
Somehow, yeah, I just maybe wasn't paying attention.
My very last thought.
Yeah, you go.
Do you want to go with your final thought? Mine is stupid, so I'm gonna go first in case yours is more dramatic than mine. Mine is truly random. Rhaenys looks like she has a water bottle in her hair. You know, when you're a kid and you put your hair in a ponytail and you put a water bottle in it and then you put the rest of the ponytail around it. That's what Rhaenys' hair looks like.
And
you can't tell me it doesn't. It totally looks like that.
Can you, let me find it. Hold on. I've been Googling everything today.
Every time they put her on screen, I was like,
Rhaenys?
Water bottle hair lady. Rhaenys. It's my best
See,
guess.
Rhaenyra, same thing.
I know. I'm so sorry that I said Rhaenyra for the first 45 minutes. I feel very sad about that.
That's all good.
To be fair, it's because I wrote notes and my autocorrect freaked out every time I wrote a single person's name.
Yes, less of a water bottle and more of like 3 bumpets. It's not tall enough. It's very
but
wide.
It's out. It's like a half up and it's like out. So it looks like the water bottle went like out, but still that there is a water bottle there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'll buy that.
Okay. What's your final?
My thing was that, I had been agog and aghast at you in your general direction about the cost per episode for Game of Thrones, which we looked up. An average cost was $6 million per episode. Now I'm sure season 7 and
like season 1 had way less.
Right. I'm sure that bumped it up, but $6 million on average per episode. Dang.
Well, how does that compare to like Stranger Things' last season?
I'll look that up in one moment. But can you guess what the cost per episode is so far for House of Dragon on average?
I'm not good at this stuff. I was just reading something about how the Lord of the Rings series is like crazy expensive, but even that, I forgot the number. Cost per episode, let's say 25 million.
Ooh, you overshot, but 20 million per episode.
I was going to say 20 million at first.
Yeah.
And then I went higher. Yeah, I believe that. I think it's because I feel like I recently read that the Lord of the Rings one was like a $350 million production, and that's like the whole season, I think, but still.
So Stranger Things, the first season cost $6 million per episode.
Oh no, oh wow, that's already a lot for the first season.
But
yeah,
30 million per episode
for season 4.
For season 4.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Well, I mean, it doesn't. If you really just like think about the number, it's like holy crap. But like, yeah, I mean, movies are 100 million sometimes. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers. We'd have to like write out some big movies and compare them.
I'm looking up now Stranger Things, which this is not a Stranger Things podcast. We can wrap it up soon, but
it once was.
It once was. In 2018, when they started, Winona Ryder and David Harbour started getting around $350,000 an episode at the very beginning. So that was their starting salary, where Finn Wolfhard and Caleb McLaughlin got $250,000 an episode.
Nice.
as
Not bad
little
for a kid.
guys. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say only $100,000 less than Winona Ryder. Holy crap.
that's true. She should have gotten more justice for
Yeah.
Winona.
Justice for Winona. I wonder how much
I'm sure
I
she got
keep wanting to
more.
call her Elle. What's
Oh,
that?
yeah, Millie
Millie
Bobby
Bobby
Brown.
Brown. Mhm.
Who knows? Well,
I,
shall we wrap?
we should wrap. A lot of thoughts. Are you excited to watch more now that you've rewatched and sort of had a change of heart?
Yeah, yeah. Because after the first episode, I was like not into it, and then I honestly think my brain turned off the first time I watched the second episode. I was just like, this
Mm.
is boring. I don't like this. And then I rewatched the first two episodes and I was like, okay, now that I'm watching intently and I'm like trying to pay attention as hard as I can,
Yeah.
I don't dislike it. I was like, okay, I'm sort of interested to see where this goes. I actually had some level of
Interest.
anticipation of
Yeah.
for the third episode. And then I liked the third episode. And so yeah, actually, I think I could say I'm into it now.
I think same. I think I would be surprised if I didn't watch all 10 episodes, which is good because now
Oh,
we
I'll definitely
can
watch
keep
them. Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm just
Huzzah.
glad that like my brain doesn't shut off when I watch it anymore. It just took me having to rewatch the first two episodes, which it was, a time suck.
It can
But
also be a timing thing, like when you decide to watch, what you're doing when you watch. If it's actually you're like, oh, a Sunday or just come out Sunday. Yeah. Oh, it's a Sunday. Let me like finish my cleaning for the weekend and like reward
I think
myself
the
by
problem
sitting
is
in
like
front of the
you
TV. I don't know.
can't multitask while you're watching
Yeah.
this. And like, I don't know if it's just I've gotten used to multitasking because I watch so much TV. Obviously, TV is better if you don't multitask, like before everybody yells at me. Like, I know that. But
Mhm.
there are shows that you can still enjoy and that like you can sort of listen to and process, even if you're not paying 100% attention. The problem with this show is that you can't listen. Like, I
There are
have to
things you'll
use
miss.
100% mental capacity to process what they're saying because of the
Mhm.
names and the places and like the subtlety. And actually, that makes for a good show. I
Mhm.
just, hadn't gone into it using 100% brain capacity, which was my own fault. And I can hear the people now thinking to themselves, how dare she review TV when she's not using 100% brain capacity to watch it? But going back and using my brain, I do like the show. I am excited for more. I wouldn't say it's like the best thing I've ever seen by any
Yeah.
means, but it's good. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, I like having a fantasy show to watch. I am also watching the Lord of the Rings show currently.
I have to still start that.
I will say currently, maybe liking that a little bit more than this one. But
I'll check
yeah,
it out. Maybe
yeah,
we'll
we
do
can
that
talk
next
about
week.
that. Sounds good.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks for chatting.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
See ya.